At Ramone Valadez 67.
I love that. And you and I have different camera angles, so we have slightly different points of view. How fitting, you know. What happens if you're seated at the table and today I am in this chair, and out of habit or custom or ritual, every time we come to Sunday supper or Monday lunch, I take this seat and I sit in this seat and you sit in that seat. What happens when the habits of rituals and customs have the dividend of security and familiarity, but the unintended and potentially unwelcome dividend of automatic reactive thought? Sometimes you could argue it really is beneficial to stand up and just, if you're going to your favorite restaurant, try a different table. I know how hard this is because I actually have a bit of an OCD. If I go to a restaurant where I'm a regular, if I don't sit in my seat or if somebody's sitting in my seat, I almost can't enjoy my meal as much. I'd almost rather wait for them to be done so I could sit at my seat, right? It doesn't make sense. But if there's one seat in the house that makes me feel happy, I know that about myself. It's called self-awareness. It might also have another a diagnostic name. But maybe the same thing holds true in public life, and maybe the same thing holds true in the Senate and the Congress and the Board of Supervisors. And it is in this hope today, from the seat where I'm sitting, that I move over just a little bit today, and the seat where you're sitting, Ramone, where you maybe sit just a little bit different, that we have a new perspective. And it forces us to choose to be even more present in this moment and not just speak the story, the narrative that has become our habitual narrative. And there's a reason I'm saying all this.
And I would tell you that you're absolutely right. I think all of us as human beings, regardless of whether or not we're OCD or maybe some of us have OCD tendencies, I think all of us get into a comfort zone, and that's what we're used to and that's what we like, without ever knowing if we actually like something else a little better. So you're absolutely right, Jennifer. But I think it's actually not a function of being OCD. It's really more a function of being human.
Yeah, but I don't want to be right. I want to be happy. Boy, oh boy. If I could tell you, there are so many instances in my life where I would much rather be happy than right. Yet, when it comes right down to it, boy, oh boy, I have a hard time letting go of, but I'm right.
That's also a human tendency.
So where we are at this moment in time is on a Monday morning, Monday afternoon now, Monday midday, where we come together for lunch, where we save the seat at the head of our table for our guest of honor. And that seat is where the cameras are for our YouTube and Facebook Live. Where we are today at this moment, we usually say, hey, we have this custom. How we do this particular segment on this particular hour of this particular show is you bring a concept or a word, and I bring one as well, and we see how they synchronize to tell a story of positivity that is more about inspiration than almost anything else I find.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. But I find that I think a lot of us are feeling a little troubled with what happened this weekend. And I think you and I talked about it on the way over here. And instead of going through our normal routine, I think it's important, if nothing else, to begin a dialogue. A very real dialogue that isn't in what we just talked about in terms of a comfort zone, but rather one whose outcome needs to be solutions.
Mm-hmm. But before we do that, we want to have a conversation, and you and I need to have a conversation about, well, should we ditch what we normally do? I mean, is this so dramatic? Is this so powerful a situation that we find ourselves in? What's the test that we apply to explain how we feel this way? What's the test we apply to decide we're going to shift what we're doing, we're going to change what we normally do, and we don't even know what we're going to do, but we know we can't do the usual normal because why? What's the thinking? Why were you and I separately feeling something's just not quite right about going through the motions of this day?
I think with what happened in El Paso and in Dayton this weekend and being so close together, you know, a lot of the talking heads this weekend talked about how the fact that we as Americans are getting used to having this on the news. Well, this is not something we should be okay with. And if you look a little deeper, I think we find that the cause of some of this is hate. And if we ever become okay with hate, there's something wrong with us. I wrote a statement this morning. I was so troubled by this. I actually wrote a statement that I've been working with this morning. And if I may, I'd like to read it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It says, like many of you, I was shocked by the events of El Paso and Dayton this past weekend. My thoughts and prayers go out to all the victims and families and all those affected by this horrible event. When I learned about these events, I felt angry and even scared, like many of you. These are indeed difficult times when we have heard so much about hatred of others merely because of differences. While that hatred may have woven itself into the fabric that is America, it is up to us as individual Americans to say this is not my America. It is up to us not to answer hatred with more hatred, but to lead by way of example, an example of love, caring, and responsibility for each other. This I offer as our call to action to prove who we are as America. We must also demand that those who have stalled in dealing with this issue and many others take action. Too long they have found comfort on both sides, Democrat and Republican, with their extreme positions, which kept them from even talking to each other. We must hold such false leaders accountable. They must come out of their comfort zone, as we talked a few moments ago, of their extremist positions like the founding fathers did, to learn to talk to each other, work with each other, and figure it out. This is not easy. This will never be easy, but it is leadership. The solution to the problem will not be easy because it involves both sides being willing to compromise. To the question of whether or not universal background checks need apply, the answer must be yes. To the question about realistically dealing with mental health issue in this country, again, the answer must be yes. However, that is only the beginning, as this issue has many more facets than just these two. Together as a nation, we have a history of solving the greatest problems we have faced. It is only by working together that we will solve this problem.
You feel passionately about this.
Yes,
I don't
do.
think I've ever heard you so fired up and emotional.
You know, the implications of what's been happening scare me because this isn't my America. This is not the America I grew up with. This is not the idea, the foundation, the fruit that is this country. We're better than this. We're so much greater than this. And the reason that we have progressed to the point that we have as a country, a nation, a people, is not because of the sameness, the homogeneous, but rather by taking our differences and multiplying
Our glorious
them.
differences.
Our glorious differences and multiplying into a sum that is greater than all its parts put together.
When you and I were talking today about how disquieting this weekend has been, upsetting, unconscionably familiar, we were talking about what do we do? What do we do? What do any of us do? What do any of us that don't have this platform for this public discussion? I am imagining right now that everybody that I know who is a human being on this planet is having a discussion of some sort.
First in the
At
media.
least I hope they are.
No, I think they are. We have to be. As a people, we have to be. And the first thing that we can do is something very simple. Go out and show kindness to each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talk about that every day, though.
Show kindness, but how many times do we go out and practice it?
I think the bigger issue is let's explain why that matters. And we're going to take a break in about 3 minutes. And when we do, I want everyone to think about this, please. When we understand the laws of nature, the laws of the universe, the laws that govern everything, that if something exists in the universe, you tend to, if it has lots of energy, you get more of it. The thing sort of begats itself and it grows and it grows and it grows, good or bad. That's the nature of dynamic energy. That's why if you're a sports fan, you understand that, oh, did you just feel that? Yeah, the momentum from one team to the other just shifted and the whole game turned around. Right? That's what happens in the world. Energy shifts. And then once that momentum goes, well, there may be no stopping them now, right? They may be going all the way to the end of the game, the championship, what have you. The nature, the explanation of why things happen isn't something that anybody needs to debate, but we could. So what does it mean when there's so much fear, when there's so much hatred? Do you feel it growing? Do you feel it expanding? Do you feel it changing? Regardless of where you're at, what state you live in, where your forebears came from, regardless of who you are in terms of your professional life, if you are a parent, the thing that strikes me is rather than looking at all the things that may differentiate us and make us separate, we have one sacred duty, and it's to find the one thing that we do agree on. And we have to find the one thing in any negotiation. Find the one thing you agree on and grow from there. And I don't think we've done that yet. I don't think we can agree on the one thing. And if a mother shielding her 2-month-old child and being killed in the process doesn't make you stop and apply some kind of moral character test to who you are personally in your own universe and in your own family and city and community, then we've got a bigger problem.
And Jennifer, it was worse than that, as you recall. Not only was it a mother who was 24 years old, shielding her 2-month-old infant child, but it was her husband who died protecting her, shielding her, who was shielding their child.
It's unfathomable. Listen, 520-790-2040 is our telephone number, and we're going to open up our phone lines uniquely today. Think of this as a drop-in center. Think of this as a place where you're going to join us at our table. If I could pour you a cup of coffee, I would. And let's have a conversation about how you're doing, what are you thinking about this, and how this is impacting life here in Tucson. We'll be back with more right after this. This is Around the Table. Welcome to our table. Welcome back, everybody. 10:30 a.m. The Voice, trusted local news and talk. This is Around the Table, live from the City of Gastronomy, where we've invited the most interesting and influential tastemakers, newsmakers, style makers, lawmakers, movers, shakers, healers, foodies, friends, and you, saving you the seat at the head of the table. Our guest of honor, we're going to break bread together. Okay, so you know it's a funny day because I am sipping on an In-N-Out Burger vanilla shake. Yeah, I never eat fast food. I don't eat burgers from the fast food. I don't eat stuff like that at all, but I don't even want to say it's like a comfort thing. I can't even explain why I needed a few sips of a vanilla shake. I don't eat the whole thing. So, I don't know. I just proves I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm not alone with everything that's going on in the world, the way the world is looking at us and interpreting what's going on. And by the way, there's an old saw that goes a little something like this. Oh, actions speak louder than words. So what happens when the world is looking at the actions of the United States, regardless of the words that are being said about it, not being said about it? To me, we have, I don't want to say a pivot point, but I think we've been at a pivot point for some time. But on Mondays, we are really fortunate to have Pima County Supervisor Ramone Valadez on to help us remain positive and to start our week off on a trajectory of like really positive energy and inspiration. And he joins us again on this somewhat somber Monday.
Yes, Jennifer, and you know what? One of the things I did want to go through, and it's kind of fitting. We talked a little bit about what happened and how a lot of us are feeling about that and what we need to do. And ironically, I had actually put together some notes to talk about on our previous word, and I was going to choose the word of personal growth, just growth in general. And obviously, I was taking the page from Dr. John C. Maxwell, who, as you know, is a mentor of mine, and he talks about leaders, and he says, when you're first starting out as a leader, it is easy to put the emphasis on the words. They're the easiest access points to people that people have to our thinking and our heart. But over time, our words carry less weight than our actions, because actions are the genuine outflow of our thinking and our heart. So that being kind of a transition point in this discussion, we really need to talk about what it is we want to attract. And I know we've got a special guest that's going to come on in the latter half of this show, but you know, what do we want out of this? We want to learn. We've talked on previous shows about significance. Significance is really not what we do, it's what we do for others, that we leave behind after we're gone. What matters. So ask ourselves, what is it that we want? Do we want to be remembered for what? I want to be remembered for loving my community, my country, my nation, my family, my neighbors. And we need to think about what it is we want to attract and then go out and express that. In my statement, I talked about us being an example. And part of the reason I read Dr. Maxwell's is because he talks about later on, actions matter more than our words. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that also in the past, in that when other nations look to us to see what it is they should do, it's no different than people. People do about 20% of what we tell them. So we can talk about all these wonderful things, but they do 80% of what they see us doing.
Right.
So right now, it's absolutely correct. We need to be the America that we can be. We need to be the Pima County we know we are. And we need to go out, show kindness. We need to go out and love each other and be the example. Show others outside of our community how we are towards each other.
So this is the conversation you and I were having prior to this hour commencing, which is the hour where we send the week off on a trajectory of, positive messages. And we're like, can we really do that? I mean, can we really go in to the studio today and sit in front of a microphone and sit on Facebook and YouTube and say, you know, we're gonna not address this because we know that to address this gives it more power. And how do we explain that that's the reason that we're deliberately choosing to include in this conversation today the acknowledgement of what's going on, and yet recognize that it's the law of the universe that if we feed this beast will grow.
That's why the answer has to be that we feed it with something other than hate. Feed it with love. Feed it with kindness. Feed it with charity. Feed it with generosity.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for this show, for this discussion, and for anybody that's with us today? 520-790-2040. That is our phone number. And if you would like to join in this conversation and share a thought about where and how any one of us can go and make a really personal difference, if you have a tip about how to embody through action love, kindness, positivity, I'm open. I'd love to hear it from you. I know Ramone and I talked about it. He does too. 520-790-2040. How can we, through these simple acts, be part of our solution? We're going to go to the phones. Roberta's with us. Hello, Roberta.
Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, how are you, hon?
Well, I'm in shock after hearing what's happened, like everybody else is, and I was listening to some psychologists discuss it,
Mm-hmm.
and she thinks that these shooters have been badly wounded in early childhood and don't know how to deal with it appropriately, and neither does their families don't, or they would address it. It isn't addressed, and maybe if they learned in the schools, if they could spot children that were behaving badly, or just keeping to themselves, and loners that have problems, and have counselors to kind of talk to them and get it out of them. And if they had classes to teach them how to express their hurt, their pain, their disappointment, and their anger. Because anger that isn't dealt with, the Bible says, grows into resentment, and resentment into the root of bitterness that defiles many. And the anger just grows and grows into hostility and then violence if it isn't addressed.
Which is all the opposite of love.
Right. The parents don't know how to respond when the children are hurt or disappointed or angry. I think they could do some role-playing in the schools, teaching them how to express their anger, and then teaching them how to respond to someone who is hurt or angry or disappointed.
That would be so much more powerful and positive than teaching children how to do drills in the case of an active shooter situation in a school. And yet, I'm so sorry to say, I bet every parent out there would say, but I want my kid to know what to do in case of that scenario. That's the trouble. That's the moment in time we face.
That's why there's so much anger in this world today. It's unbelievable. That's all you hear is anger amongst even the leaders of our country are so angry and resort to bad behavior like character attacks instead of solving issues. We need to get down to solving the issues and addressing them in their root cause in the beginning, and not letting them grow and get out of hand. Another thing is some doctors say that almost everyone is deficient in minerals, and when a person is deficient in lithium, it can cause them to become violent. And that they can either get it on a doctor's prescription or they can get it in a health food store as lithium orotate. But the main thing is to take the whole host of of minerals, trace minerals, are cheap because they come in liquid bottles, and you just put a few drops in your water, so they last a long time. And I've heard this repeatedly from doctors, that getting minerals into people is the most important thing, because they're all nutritionally deficient when they resort to bad behavior.
And what's so ironic about how you tie this together so beautifully for us is that we are malnourished. We are spiritually, emotionally, physically malnourished, because the foods that we eat, especially this, I was guilty of it today. I'm sipping a milkshake from In-N-Out Burger. I don't mean to pick on In-N-Out Burger.
I used to do that too, but now I make my own.
Well,
I'm out of healthy ingredients.
Yeah. But the point that you raise is an absolutely brilliant one. And Ramone Valadez, who's in the studio with me today, was nodding in agreement. Roberta, thank you so much for calling.
To Roberta's point, actually, she's absolutely right, and that's part of what I think we wanted to kind of start. You and I, based in the conversation we had in the cars, wanted to have that dialogue where we're getting ideas of where do we need to start addressing this issue so that we can start combating it with love and caring. You know, Roberta talked a little bit about the tie between nutrition and behavior. There's actually been studies where in a jail what they did is they actually gave the entire population of a particular jail supplements. And they found that violent behavior dropped somewhere between 60 to 80%.
Well.
And over again, we see that.
And they got pie. No, I'm sorry. That's a joke. I had to throw a little humor in there.
And so we see a tie between mental and behavioral health and nutrition. So she's absolutely right on both of those points. We also got a comment from Javier Alvarez online who says a good beginning would be to apply the golden rule. Mm-hmm. Treat others as we wish to be treated, and he's absolutely right on that point as well.
And you know, part of my, I'm really curious about something, because you and I have known each other a short amount of time. I mean, obviously, I've been a follower of yours because you're a sort of generous public figure who is in service to this community for a long time. But we've only known each other relatively well, like this, a short amount of time. I'm really curious. What's your instinct in this moment in time? What are your instincts to act? Because I don't know you well enough to guess. I mean, I think I know, but I kind of know because I knew what we would do today, and I kind of was hoping you'd be on the same page, and of course we were. But what's your instinct?
I will tell you, like most of our listeners, and you saw it right now. Most of the people on camera couldn't see it. I almost broke down when I was reading my statement, because it's such an emotional issue for me.
Yeah.
And it should never.
Because you love your country.
It should never be okay.
You love your community.
It should never be okay. Think about we talked about all the negative, and I don't want to focus on that anymore. But the truth is, my first instinct is just to scream, not again. And then my second is, okay, now that we've got that out, how can we solve the problem? Because screaming gets it out really well, but it's not part of the solution. Part of the solution that we can do every day, there's the everyday part. And that has to be that we show compassion for each other, we love each other, we respect each other, regardless of whether or not we agree. That's irrelevant. Love each other. Javier talked about using the golden rule. Use the golden rule. Regardless of whether or not you agree with somebody, that's irrelevant. Then figure out one of the things that has kept so many solutions at many different levels from becoming reality is simply the fact that there hasn't been that willingness. We talked about a comfort zone. Well, sometimes those political positions are comfort zones on this side and on this side. And for those of us who can't hear or can't see, I'm going from one hand to the other. And they're comfortable because you don't have to do anything. That comfort needs to end. Leadership is not about comfort zones. Leadership is about getting outside of that comfort zone.
Right. Or thriving in that space outside the comfort zone. I'm going to guess, because I'm pretty obvious and relatively transparent, that you could guess what my instinct is. My instinct, first of all, I'm a mom. And because I'm a mom, I'm very solutions oriented because moms want to get this done. Moms, and we're going to talk to another mom in the next segment, but one of the things moms do is you kind of shut it down and you kind of reconnoiter and you kind of gather it all up and you're like, all right, let's see, what do we have to work with? But the other thing that is my instinct, so in the most broad cultural sense, I really believe that if we just sat down and had lunch together, that would be in a better place. We might not solve every problem, but we'd sure be better off than we were. And we will understand more. And we will have more compassion and more empathy and more consideration. Because one of the things we discussed on the way over here is there is enormous value in actually having a conversation, because when the words come out of your mouth, you hear yourself saying those words. You hear the other parties saying those words. You become engaged in the dialogue. It is a really powerful thing to take. That's an action. Just talking about this is an action. It's an absolutely powerful action. And if you listen with an open mind and an open heart, not to be swayed, but to really hear. And if what you hear is fear or anger or frustration or rhetoric born of fear or anger or frustration, you get a better idea of how to make things a little bit better. And what we try and do here each and every Monday when we get together is we try and just put it all out there. We don't ask for a response. We just get it out there because we know, you know, and I know that with the love that we bring to this effort every week, that things are better just by virtue of being improved a little bit.
And you know what? One of the things that's interesting that sometimes we forget or lose sight of is that really we have a lot more in common than not. So if 80 to 90% we have in common, even when we disagree, you know what? That's a pretty good percentage. But Garrett said it's not a matter of rights; it's a matter of doing the right thing now.
Mm-hmm. He's a smart man.
Yes.
1:41 p.m. We're going to take a very quick break. And we come back. Rianne Maldonado is going to join us at our table. We're going to take your calls and questions, 520-790-2040. This is Around the Table, live from the City of Gastronomy. You're with us here on AM 1030 The Voice, your trusted source for local news and talk. We'll be back with more right after this. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Around the Table. It's lunchtime here in the Old Pueblo. Live from the city of gastronomy, we join the most interesting and influential tastemakers, newsmakers, style makers, lawmakers, movers, shakers, healers, foodies, and friends each and every day right here in this beautiful studio.
Buck had another one of his insights that's very good. He says, how do we get people to engage together in a reasonable conversation?
So I'm going to say, as a parent, sometimes what you got to do is go into the kitchen, give everybody a cookie, give everybody a cup of coffee, give everybody something, and say, all right, let's just talk for a minute. There is something about being heard. There is something about expressing that which is inside you that needs to come out and get expressed. The conversation should take place, but boy, isn't it funny how no matter where you are in the world, if you're at somebody's house that you've never been to before, do you ever find yourself gravitating towards the kitchen because it's the heart of the home? Do you ever find yourself just drawn to this place?
Depends who's cooking.
That's funny. That is funny. Yes, but the whole point is food is comforting. Food unites us. And in the second hour of the show today, we're actually going to talk about how in times of grief, especially, but in times of trauma or turmoil or celebration, we turn to food. But in times of sadness, we turn to comforting foods. And we're going to talk to Chef Marjorie Drucker, who is, you know how they had the soup guy on Steinfeld? I'm talking to the soup queen today because there is nothing more comforting than a bowl of soup. And honestly, as we're talking about this, Ramone, you know, the old-fashioned soup kitchens where you fed everybody, if you didn't have anything, you just brought what you had and you made a big pot of soup and then everybody had a little something. There's a part of me, the more we talk today, I'm feeling motivated to make soup for everybody and just give you a bowl of soup, sit down, and let's say, all right, what do we have in common? What is the one thing we all can agree on? There's got to be one thing.
Oh, there's more.
We're not leaving this table until we find the one thing we can agree on.
You know, and Buck's comment, I think, is not only appropriate. I think we need to figure out a mechanism where we can have that discussion, and with understanding. When we were in the break, 90%. Why are we letting the 20 to 10%? So what? As she put it during the break, you can hear her laugh.
That fabulous laughter
So
is Rianne Maldonado. She joins us now. She's with us every Friday for Spirit's Kitchen. She's accustomed to inviting us into her kitchen. She's a mother of 5, so she's accustomed to help us understand a little bit better the big picture of how we're more alike show today.
It is.
And it's a painful show for a lot of reasons. We're all a little uncomfortable. Sometimes we don't know how to put our feelings into words. I know I can't even wrap my head around what's going on. How does the law of the universe and the law of attraction factor into whatever it is that we choose to do next?
Like we were talking on the breaks, you know, like you said, also what we put our energy into is what we make more of. And so not that this tragedy shouldn't be acknowledged for the families involved, more of it. All of the hate Ramone was talking about is creating more hate in the world. And I think if we could all just drop that, stop it, don't talk about it, and only put the positive, put the love, be nice, the golden rule, do all of that, it will grow more of that.
I have to ask the question to both of you. Be the thing that unites us, or do you think that there are people out there that are not sharing that point of view?
Well, unfortunately, I think that big consciousness of more people feeling horrified by it is amplifying that energy. I think we need to send love to the families. If we focus on the love, that's going to grow, in my opinion.
And piggybacking on what Brianne was talking about, really, if you look at, it's similar to what Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book, Tipping Point. Is this or what is going to be our tipping point where instead of having that being our version of America? And then we've got a comment from Luis Vega who says, break bread at the table and talk and hash out our differences, and let's make this world for all of us.
Luis, I cannot agree with you more. Breaking bread, how do you...
I think there's a really important thing to point out too, though, that when we come together and we have differences to talk about, I think if we go into it not trying to change the other person, yes, let's be heard. Like just getting to say what I need to say makes me feel valued and important. And then hearing
being right. Everybody that's in this
But
fight
most
thinks
people
that
want-
they're right.
right. But
And
if you can
everybody's
leave
so
that-
locked into being right.
If you can leave that aside and just say, I just want to be heard, and then I'm going to hear you, and I don't have to be like you, and you don't have to be like me, but let's just.
The thread, and honey, you're right. She said,
He's a very smart man.
remembering between being right or being kind, choose to be kind.
Let's say that
Yeah.
one again, please.
Between being right and being kind, choose to be kind.
And if you're going to choose to do one thing out of your usual routine, your rituals, your comfort zone, that thing that's your habit, that story you rely on like a verbal crutch to communicate something that you quote unquote believe, but that may be no longer serving you. How do we go from being in that place to letting go of something that no longer serves us, but that is as comfortable as your favorite socks or shoes?
I'm dealing that with nuts to me. And I have to learn now to watch them and say, wait a minute, was what you said helpful or kind, or did you just need to be right and express that? So I'm like,
For all of us.
yeah.
So one more time, courtesy of your beautiful wife.
If you have to choose between being right and being kind, choose to be kind.
Because this might just be the global moment when the thing we can agree on is we need Ben's bells. You know, we really do. We need their message and mantra of kindness.
Say this, the school that my children go to, they actually have a counselor on campus with a classroom, and they rotate the children through, and they teach them things like coping and anger and how to talk about your feelings. It is a mandatory part of their week. It's beautiful. And every single one from kindergarten on up goes at a grade level appropriate rotation.
No, that's great, actually,
Mhm.
because it's, I mean, we think about it as those are coping mechanisms in behavioral health, but they're not. They're life skills.
Life's exactly. And so I'm proud to say that our elementary school does that.
When we were talking earlier in this hour about how do we approach a very difficult topic, few things are going to come up in almost any of our lives as difficult as this moment in time. What advice do you have about when that difficult conversation needs to take place, and it isn't just one you have with an intimate person in your life, a spouse, a parent, a child, where there's an equity, an emotional equity that will protect the relationship? How do you have this conversation in a broader cultural sense? How do you make it happen in a way that is productive and is safe? Is it even possible?
I hope Ramone has a good answer, because I honestly kind of hide from conflict. I do. I don't want to rock the boat. So if I know I'm different than somebody, I just kind of let them.
Okay.
I'm learning.
I actually just did something very similar on a Spanish radio show last week, where we really talked about democracy. And one of the things that we're facing right now as a democracy,
As an abstract concept or a practical reality?
you decide. But what we're facing right now to a great degree is that conflict is not foreign to a democratic process. As a matter of fact, I would argue that it is part of that process. What is happening right now is that we are facing a point in our lives where we get to the conflict part of the process and we get stuck there. And either we like it or we're afraid of it. But regardless of whether or not you feel one way or the other about it, it is part of that process. But in order to get to the point of where the democratic process is meant to solve problems, you've got to move beyond just a straight conflict. Understanding it is part of that process.
Yeah.
You've got to move on to that process, just like our founding fathers did, even though they disagreed and many of them disliked each other. They found a way to talk to each other, to work together, and look at what they founded. Now, it's our keepsake. It's our time to do what the founding fathers did for this country, for our community.
If you ever find yourself in an adversarial situation, let's say it's in a sporting arena.
Wow, that never happens to me.
Ever.
Ever.
Never. Say you're, I don't know, up for re-election. say you're in the courts somehow. Say you find yourself in that situation. How is it that we've lost the fine art of good sportsmanship? Where is decency? The good sportsmanship kind of decency. Where did win at all costs come from? Because I don't remember as a young person growing up playing any athletic games and sports that you win at all costs. But there is an absolute sense that you must win at all costs. Now, when did that happen, and how do you deal with that in politics? How do you deal with that as a parent?
I will tell you that politics is obviously by its nature and definition very competitive. But oftentimes, and we all fall into the trap, myself included, in different times, and thinking that I have to win. And the truth is, it's not that I have to win. When one is a leader, one has to look outward at who one serves first.
Because it's more about service than anything else.
Because I have to win is about me. We have to win is about us. And I think to a great degree, we have become a society that praises and prizes winning above all other things without really understanding the cost.
So what I hear you saying is, I have to serve so that we all may win.
Correct. Well, and if you really think about it, that's actually the goal. If we can all win, if we all become better, if we all become
If
closer,
the rising tide lifts all of our boats.
Correct.
Okay. So we've got less than 2 minutes left, and I am deeply grateful to both of you for being here. And I want to actually put the brakes on completely of this conversation. And in the minute we have left, I want you, Rianne, because I know you are a Reiki master, I want you to give us some paradigm-shifting, energy-shattering, positive love and Reiki before we go. Because one of the things we have to do is we have to put so much love out there right now that it just jump-starts the better.
Should we do just for today? All right. Just close your eyes if you like and just take a deep breath and follow along. Just for today, I will not anger. Just for today, I will not worry. Just for today, I will do my work honestly. Just for today, I will be grateful for my many blessings. And just for today, I will be kind to my neighbor and every living thing.
Just for today.
Just for today.
Rianne Maldonado, we'll see you Friday right here on Spirit's Kitchen. And Ramone Valadez, Pima County Supervisor, for people that want to get in touch with you, to want to try and make a difference, where can they contact you?
Either on my Facebook page at Ramone Valadez 67 or my office 724-8492.
Should we take this conversation offline and continue it for everybody, because I think we haven't gotten anywhere close to an answer?
Absolutely.
When we come back, please hug your kids, count your blessings. We'll be back with more right after this.